Hello and welcome to CrestVahllen D&D. I'm your not-so-humble Dungeon Master TJ, and this will be our first episode of the LoreKeeper'sTales. This will be a new series that we'll be running that will delve into more of the historical and cultural and other vignettes of what's going on in the world throughout the planet of Vonteria, and more specifically the continent of CrestVahllen. However, as this is our first episode, I'd like to give everybody a cursory overview of our campaign setting in general. In order to do that, let's take a quick look at a very old map that I made several years ago. I will be making a new continental CrestVahllen map in the coming months or so stay tuned for that. Here we go. Now, let's start up in the northwestern section. We have Sarnlö, which is the seat of power of the Lithuanian Confederacy, pretty much the remnants of the old ancient Elven Empire, and whatever's left. Next, we have the Sils Marshes, which is the bog and swamp-like area of the terrain of the western coast that has mostly sunken and started to seethe into the ocean itself, hence the sunken islands. Then we have the southwestern region called the Shalian Cradle, geographically cut off from the rest of the continent. It has high cliff sides on all of the coastlines and a mountainous curvature to the northern and eastern side, geographically isolating it. And then just northeast of that, we have the Akkadi's Breath, which is a windswept and torn plain of terrain. Not very many people live there, if at all, constantly buffeted by torrential winds. Moving north then, past the Barrel Sea, we have Thule, which is the headquarters for the Bardic College or Bardic University, depending on where you're from. To the east then we have the Northern Wastes, which is exactly what it sounds like, a wasteland of bare trees, and we got orcish bands there, and giantkin, the whole thing. We'll move even further east now to go to the Bitter Reach, which is where Kamisk and Loshma are headed. That's where we have more northern culture, some giantkin, Firbolg, other types of things, lots of humans, but we'll discuss a lot of this information in some later videos as I do more regional areas. Let's move down south now. Let's talk about the Razer Fang agreement. This is the Razer Fang mountain range where the gnomes and the dwarves made an agreement many eons ago and have had steadfast here a nation of their own for a very long time. The seat of power is Thulmorbed with the triumvirate rules. Now, the gnomes and the dwarves banded together in this thing called the Razer Fang Agreement eons ago, in which helped stem the tide of this ancient elven empire that was moving east from the west coast, conquering everything in their wake, with very little resistance. But they were stopped in a stalemate at the mountain range as the gnomes and the dwarves extended the certain fortifications so that they couldn't be flanked and go around the mountain range and be hit from different sides, yada yada. That happened for who knows how long. Some say hundreds of years there was a stalemate between as the war, the attrition just didn't move. Now, the gnomes and the dwarves had superior technology which helped them fend off the superior magics of the elves, and that went on for who knows how long until it just stopped, and nobody really knows what happened. Then we have in almost the very center of the map Hilnsfarn, which is the seat of power of the Greater Protectorate of Hilnsfarn, which extends all the way to the southern reaches of the Northern Waste and sometimes amoeboid pseudopods its way towards the Bitter Reach, as well as encompasses the plains of Hest and even reaches the edge of the Maw and close to Dead Run Gorge. These attrition lines and borders are always in flux and not really kept too much attention to, but we'll discuss that later. To the south, we have the party town of Solis, where a lot of breweries, meaderies, and wineries make their home, as well as a lot of taverns with gnomes that do cool tinkering, DJ equipment, raves, and techno music. To the southeast, we have the Lewamban Peninsula, where the Lewamban Dominion rules, its borders reaching past the Dead Run Gorge and approaching Sasso. Then we have the Maw, a unforgiving wasteland desert of nothing but sands and hot suns. This is where the Coalition of the Golden Dawn holds their seat of power at Babas, the capital, where Kenrins are the most populated species, and they even have their own little pantheon that's separate from the rest of the world. Moving on, we'll move east to the Twin Isles, two massive isles that make up the northern Dynasty, which is the Northern Isle, and the Southern Dynasty, which is the Southern Isle, their respective capitals being Namung and Chaobun. Within and between them, we have the Shilong. Now, since we're over there, let's talk a little bit more about the Twin Isles. I'm going to have a map come up and we're going to do this beautiful little pan across it as we discuss a little bit more about what's going on there, seeing as this is where the Baker's Dozen started their campaign. So the Northern Dynasty here is the seat of power of people that are not sympathetic to the people, the native peoples that used to live here, the islanders that were here before the halflings. The halflings came over here and kind of imperialistically colonized both of these isles. The Northern Dynasty doesn't really care too much. They're more into just expanding their empire, whereas the Southern Dynasty is more sympathetic to the Core's plight. Now, the native peoples are called the Core. They're these white-skinned yet black-marked people that live in often cliff sides that they carve their houses into. Think like Bandelier National Park, that kind of thing. But there used to be a big war between the Northern and Southern Isles, and those feelings of sympathy and otherwise just one part of what started this war. And it went on for a very long time, and only recently has there been a truce. Our Baker's Dozen campaign started in Shilong, which is this strip of island between the Northern and Southern Dynasty, which is kind of like an independent own island with its own kind of government. Well, more likely lack of government. Think Nassau, like a pirate island. Not the safest place, but out of the reach of the governmental powers of the Northern and Southern Dynasty. The rest of the map, much of it has been yet to explore, and so check out the Baker's Dozen campaigns to learn more about that. All right, now that we're done with the Twin Isles, let's move on to the next area. Our other campaign, the Argent Flame, started here. Now, this is the Luwamban Dominion. The Luwamban Dominion is mostly situated on the Luwamban Peninsula, with its capital seat in Luwamba. Not much is known about these people other than they're very smart, they're very resourceful, they're very nature-prone. Sometimes they have some tribes throughout. They are very good at surviving and making do in the jungles, but they also have a lot of the terrain in the area around Luwamba is extremely fertile, which is why the section called the Kalodi Fields, which is kind of the joining point between the peninsula and the continent greater itself, is very well known for its vineyards, its farmlands. It produces massive amounts of food and really good vegetation. So it is known worldwide as being very fertile. We move past that to the Fissure Barrens, which is kind of like the crack that's almost separating the peninsula from the rest of the continent. And then we move through the Rubicon Plateaus, which is think like red rocks, buttes, and hoodoos and that whole thing, moving past through the Dakota Veldt, which is very savanna, and then the torrent that separates that part from the maw itself. To Sasso, we can see this is where our Argent Flame started, this port town of Sasso, and then eventually they moved north, but I don't want to make any spoilers. North is this Quinta Silva, which is a dense forest. So that's where they started, and we can see that there is a connection between that area and the Fothid ruins that connects up into the Razer Fang mountain range. Great, so that's mostly what we're talking about there. Granted, just as a recap for the ocean that the Twin Isles are in is called the Boundless Thalasia, whereas the Southern Ocean, pretty much the ocean on the south side of the continent, is called the Ocean of Elysium. Cool. So now that we're done with that, please check out any other videos. I have more videos upcoming that are going to be a little bit more descriptive of the certain regions. Again, this was just a little recap to kind of give you guys a bit of an idea, an overarching idea of the world itself. Check out the rest of our Lorekeeper's Tales videos here, where you can see a little bit more about the regions of the world, as well as some vignettes of culture and history. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe out there.